A man in noble attire sits in a grand room as he hears a woman's refusal to be his exclusive trainer. The Duke appears contemplative as he holds a teacup, while the woman looks distressed. The Duke's gloved hand reaches for his teacup, questioning the woman's reason for declining. The woman sits uncomfortably as the Duke asks if the pay was too low or the terms were unfavorable. The Duke, with a charming expression, offers to adjust the proposal to her liking. The woman internally notes the Duke's charisma and his influential status. The Duke stands confidently amid an ornate background as the woman ponders if her current situation is akin to a webtoon or novel. The Duke expresses his frustration, revealing the woman is the first trainer young Kazan hasn't shown an aversion to. The woman apologizes again, stating her unfamiliarity with this world as a reason for her decision. She emphatically declines the Duke's offer, despite his persistence. Her inner thoughts explain her desire for a long, quiet life, resolving to avoid protagonist types like the Duke. A decorative title card marks the beginning of the chapter. The narrative shifts, revealing the woman began remembering her past life 5 years ago and wondered if this world was from a novel. She is shown working, pushing a cart, reflecting on her initial hopes of being a protagonist. She somberly recounts the harsh reality of being a poor orphan despite her past life memories. She acknowledges her good fortune in meeting the kind and motherly orphanage director. She happily recounts growing up alongside playful and sweet younger children at the orphanage. 5 years have passed since her memories returned, as shown by a grand, sparkling castle. Her hands are seen expertly placing large vegetables into a cart, saying, "Up we go." She effortlessly pushes a cart filled with produce, showing her strength and new daily routine. She reveals her current profession as a dragon trainer at a specialized training center. She smiles warmly, calling out sweetly to her dragon, Rue, in a secure enclosure. Growl. A majestic white dragon is revealed, and the trainer expresses her awe at being with a fantasy creature. Various dragons fill the sky, illustrating that they are common in this world. Dragons serve diverse roles in this world: livestock, weapons, and beloved pets. As a trainer, she couldn't be more thrilled to work with such magnificent creatures. However, the narrator clarifies that dragons are not always gentle, as a fiery red dragon breathes flames. Another dragon, a huge blue one, gracefully swims through water, showcasing diverse dragon abilities. Each dragon species possesses unique powers and traits capable of crushing buildings like cookies. She wonders what chance a human stands against such powerful beings. Gar! The trainer emphasizes that training is essential for dragons and humans to coexist peacefully. Rue, the dragon training grounds sparkle, indicating her successful cleaning efforts are complete. She calls Rue over, but the dragon hesitates, distracted by small cat-like creatures. She smirks, feigning disinterest in giving Rue treats, which makes Rue's ear perk up. Rue looks surprised and intrigued as the trainer pretends to give up on the treats. Rue softly nudges the trainer's leg, indicating she wants the treat. Too cute. The trainer happily gives Rue a treat, praising her for being a good girl. Roof! Rue happily accepts the treat, and the trainer decides they should eat after cleaning. The trainer smiles, content to see Rue looking so healthy and vibrant today. She recalls Rue's initial arrival, when the dragon had refused to eat anything. Rue happily eats from a large crate of food, and the trainer thinks about starting riding training next. Trainer Lydia is startled by someone urgently calling her name. She quickly turns, asking what's happening as a panicked man runs towards her. Huff huff, a terrified man desperately pleads for help. Trainer Lydia reacts with exasperation upon learning that Trainer Thompson's Rockwell dragon is rampant. A serene, grassy landscape introduces the description of Rockwell dragons. Rockwell dragons are described as huge, slow-moving, gentle creatures with thick, stone-like scales and plants growing on their backs. Rog! Monstrous, enraged Rockwell dragon roars, contradicting its gentle description. Eek! Trainer Thompson gazes in wide-eyed horror at the rampaging dragon. A panicked man pleads with Trainer Thompson, demanding she deal with her rampaging dragon, but she refuses to approach it while it's in a frenzy. Trainer Thompson and the panicked man frantically flee from the unseen, Massive rampaging dragon. Trainer Lydia, alerted by a desperate call, turns with a serious expression, her white dragon, Rue, behind her. Trainer Lydia questions who called her, while a voice, Thompson's inner thought, scoffs that someone had to, because Thompson couldn't handle the situation, as the furious Rockwill dragon's head is shown below. Trainer Thompson indignantly protests Lydia's remarks, but Lydia sternly silences her, warning her not to further provoke the rampant dragon. Trainer Lydia forcefully grabs Trainer Thompson's hand, physically restraining her from making the situation worse. A distressed Trainer Thompson asks Lydia if she truly believes she can manage the rampaging dragon on her own. With a determined glare, Trainer Lydia declares she will revert to her original training schedule, implying she will resolve the dragon crisis herself. The panicked man shouts for Lydia to wait as a frustrated Trainer Thompson watches, with the immense, rampaging dragon dominating the scene. Trainer Lydia fearlessly rushes towards the enormous, agitated dragon, leaving the two men behind in terrified disbelief. Trainer Lydia continues her approach towards the monstrous dragon, its shadow engulfing her, as the two men remain frozen in fear. Trainer Lydia's eyes widen in dawning realization as she closes in on the source of the dragon's distress. The panicked man narrowly evades the dragon's snapping jaws, while Trainer Lydia takes cover below the massive creature. The colossal Rockwill dragon, now calm, gently leans against a structure as Trainer Lydia approaches it with caution. Trainer Lydia offers a treat to the pacified dragon, reassuring it with a kind smile that she intends no harm. A close-up shows Trainer Lydia intently focusing as she places the treat near the dragon's large, scaled foot. Trainer Lydia gently strokes the large dragon's head, soothing its agitated state with her calming touch. Trainer Lydia continues comforting the dragon, promising to alleviate its pain by removing whatever is hurting it. Trainer Lydia carefully extracts a small, spiky object from the dragon's foot, revealing a raw, glowing area on its scale. Trainer Lydia observes the small, dark object she removed, realizing it was a sungrass seed, causing the dragon's distress. Two men watch in cautious relief as Lydia works, one reassuring her to hold on, still unaware she has resolved the immediate threat. Trainer Lydia is forcefully thrown by the Rockwill dragon, sending her sprawling, while the terrified man screams her name. Lydia recovers from the fall, confirming everyone is safe, and explains the dragon's rampage was caused by an overlooked sungrass seed, questioning why it wasn't regularly removed. Trainer Thompson stares in stunned disbelief as the gravity of Lydia's revelation about her negligence sinks in. The Ashar Training Center director, furious, yells at Rick to appear immediately, then harshly scolds him as an idiot for the chaotic situation. The director of the Ashar Training Center, seething with anger, berates Rick for his failure to properly manage the dragon, forcing Rick to offer a deep apology. The director, in a calmer tone, intervenes, stating that an apprentice like Trainer Thompson is allowed mistakes while learning under a senior trainer. The director then questions why the apprentice trainer was unaware of the basic care procedure, specifically the necessity of removing sungrass seeds from Rockwill dragons' backs, as the now calm dragon rests. The director confronts Trainer Thompson directly, implying her incompetence in saddling the dragon without addressing such a fundamental mistake, as other trainers look on in shock. Trainer Lydia points an accusing finger at Trainer Thompson, emphatically asserting that Thompson herself was the one responsible for the oversight. Trainer Thompson recoils in shock, completely speechless and horrified by Lydia's direct accusation. Trainer Thompson's face contorts in raw anguish as the full weight of Lydia's accusation and her own culpability crashes down on her. A male instructor angrily shouts Lydia's name, demanding her attention. The Ashar Training Center director sits sternly at his desk, scolding Lydia for allowing the recent dragon incident to escalate. Trainer Lydia defends her actions to the director, arguing she did nothing wrong except stop the rampaging dragon, which the director counters was her responsibility anyway. The director argues that Lydia overstepped by intervening when the assigned trainer was present, but Lydia insists some situations require immediate action. The visual metaphor of coins falling from a spectral hand illustrates the director's statement about Count Harris's financial backing of Trainer Thompson. The director, seen from behind, warns Lydia that her job is on the line, advising her to be careful with her words and actions due to Thompson's influential connections. The director further pressures Lydia, reminding her to consider the welfare of the orphanage she is affiliated with, subtly threatening its future. The director underscores that Lydia's disrespectful behavior is only tolerated because of her exceptional skills, reinforcing his control over her. Trainer Lydia stands, feeling trapped, as the director's words echo, reminding her that she requires his recommendation to leave the training center. Lydia's internal thoughts boil with frustration, cursing the oppressive and unfair circumstances that bind her. Lydia reflects that even with memories of a past life in a fantasy world, her current reality isn't significantly different from her previous one. Lydia muses that fantasy doesn't change reality, and her only notable skill is training dragons, a talent she relies on. Two men gossip about Lydia, criticizing her perceived arrogance despite her training skills and questioning her actual competence. Trainer Thompson, with a sly grin, internally scoffs that the training center only takes easy, docile dragons to inflate its reputation, implying Lydia's success is unearned. Trainer Thompson, seen from behind, spitefully speculates that Lydia might have seduced guests with her appearance, condemning her as truly petty and disgusting. Lydia beams, surrounded by the joyful orphanage children who proudly display a drawing of her and a dragon, highlighting what truly matters to her. The sun shines brightly through lush trees, signaling a serene moment as a voice commends Trainer Lydia for her excellent work. Grr! An exasperated Trainer Thompson embraces Rue, complaining about the dragon's surprising obedience and wondering if Lydia used a spell. Lydia smiles politely, responding to Count Olbart's compliment. Count Olbart suggests staying longer to build rapport with Rue, noting the dragon seems unfamiliar after their separation. Count Olbart sighs, accepting Lydia's advice while regretting his inability to fully commit time as he gently touches Rue. Count Olbart praises Lydia's dedication in caring for Rue, but Lydia humbly states it was simply her duty, gently touching the dragon. Count Olbart offers Lydia anything she desires in exchange for becoming their family's exclusive trainer. Lydia politely declines Count Olbart's offer, explaining she still needs to learn and plans to continue at the Ashar Training Center. Count Olbart assures Lydia she is always welcome if she changes her mind, as Rue nudges his leg, and Lydia expresses gratitude. Rue senses something, looking up with a surprised expression as mysterious, glittery particles appear in the air. Trainer Lydia and Count Olbart turn in surprise as Rue suddenly cries out, causing a forceful gust of wind and dust around them. A grand castle appears in the background, as Lydia wonders what is causing the sudden disturbance. Lydia tries to calm Rue, gently stroking the agitated dragon's open mouth. Count Olbart asks Lydia about the strange phenomenon, as Lydia replies she has only heard rumors about it. The scene shifts to reveal a massive, fiery red dragon, described as emitting intense heat visible from afar. The narration explains this red dragon is an extremely rare species, historically choosing only one family. Duke Alberant arrives, his imposing red dragon visible behind him, signifying a major development. The director stands anxiously in his office as a document is placed on his desk, seemingly in preparation for Duke Alberant. Duke Alberant sits in the director's office, stating he came to personally inspect the Empire's finest training facility, making the director nervous. The director, with ornate foliage framing him, confidently affirms their facility boasts the best training skills to Duke Alberant. Duke Alberant, looking assured, states he wishes to entrust them with training a dragon. The director, delighted by a potential contract for training ducal knights dragons, is surprised when Duke Alberant clarifies he means his personal dragon. The director looks utterly bewildered by the Duke's unexpected request regarding his own dragon. Duke Alberant's gloved hand points to a document as he confirms he wants someone to train his Agric species dragon. Duke Alberant, standing before a grand building, explains he is looking for an exclusive trainer worthy of his unique dragon. The director nervously cautions Duke Alberant that improper training could cause his dragon to develop an aversion to trainers. Documents flutter as voices question why the ducal family's exclusive trainer isn't handling this, suggesting only the Duke can manage such a dragon. The director flinches as Duke Alberant dismisses his concerns, stating they are unfounded. Duke Alberant, with a knowing smile, reveals that the decision for his dragon's trainer will not be made by the director. Fiery imagery surrounds text, indicating that the decision for the dragon's trainer will ultimately be made by Kazan. Trainer Lydia and another man stand in a sunny field, discussing their summons, which was a direct order from the director, leaving Lydia confused. Lydia looks worried and surprised, asking what is suddenly happening. The man asks Lydia to wait a moment, while Count Ulbart continues to pet Rue, who remains calm. Count Ulbart observes Lydia approaching, asking if something is the matter. Count Ulbart speculates that the director has summoned all trainers because of Duke Alberant's arrival. Lydia sighs in resignation, accepting the summons if it truly cannot be avoided. Chomp. Lydia promises Count Ulbart she will write down Rue's favorite treat recipe for his next visit, as Rue happily interacts with them. Lydia thanks Count Ulbart for his understanding as he waves goodbye, with Rue present. Thwack! Lydia turns sharply, demanding to know where they are supposed to gather, with Rue standing close behind her. A large crowd of trainers has gathered at Training Ground 1, confirmed by a shouting man. The director angrily scolds Lydia for being late, but Lydia apologizes, explaining she was tending to Count Ulbart, Rue's owner. Lydia's face shows a troubled expression, contemplating the ongoing situation. The director stares with a stern gaze at Duke Alberant, suggesting a growing understanding or suspicion. Lydia looks apprehensive, sensing a bad feeling about the gathering, as the director prepares to announce its purpose to the assembled trainers. The director announces that the purpose of the gathering is to select a trainer for Duke Alberant's dragon, stunning the other trainers. Trainers whisper in confusion, questioning if it's the Duke's agric species dragon and why their exclusive trainer isn't handling it. The director clarifies that participation is not mandatory, inviting only those confident in training the Duke's dragon to step forward, while Lydia looks grim. Agric species dragons only choose the Alberant ducal family, meaning there is very little information available about them. The text continues, emphasizing that the lack of information about this rare dragon species signifies a much greater risk for any potential trainer. The warning concludes that without knowing how to avoid provoking an agric species dragon, trainers risk facing its wrath with their fragile human bodies as concerned trainers listen. Lydia decisively raises her gloved hand, declaring she will take on the dangerous task of training the Duke's dragon. Numerous hands shoot up as multiple trainers exclaim their willingness to participate, viewing it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to train Duke Alberant's dragon. Lydia internally contemplates the significant opportunity to train Duke Alberant's dragon, but worries that being chosen would require her to move far from the capital. Trainer Thompson approaches Lydia with a sly grin, provocatively asking if she is scared. Trainer Thompson continues to mock Lydia, asserting that her hesitation proves she is just a girl, despite her attempts to appear tough. Thwack! The red-haired woman slaps Trainer Thompson, who recoils in shock, while Lydia internally tells herself to ignore him. The red-haired woman angrily confronts Trainer Thompson, admitting she hit him and questioning his audacity given his past failure with a Rockwall species dragon. The red-haired woman looks toward Lydia, who subtly calls out to her. Lydia warns the red-haired woman that the director is observing their interaction, as a shadowy figure with an intense aura is visible behind them. The red-haired woman turns away from a fuming Trainer Thompson, telling him he is lucky, as other trainers discreetly watch. The red-haired woman questions Lydia if her concerns stem from her affiliation with the orphanage, to which Lydia confirms, acknowledging her dependent situation. Lydia's eye reflects deep thought, pondering the implications of the situation. The red-haired woman suggests that the orphanage matron would be disappointed if Lydia passed up such a significant opportunity. A hand holds a container of sticks, as the director's voice announces that trainers will draw lots to determine the order for facing the Duke's dragon. Lydia stands apart, expressing her desire for a peaceful life, as other trainers mill around the gathering. The director assures the trainers that their safety is guaranteed, and he will intervene if the situation becomes dangerous. Lydia internally resolves never to get entangled with Duke Alberant, whom she describes as looking like a novel's male lead. The narration explains that involvement with such a figure brings endless hardship, as other trainers express their admiration for the Duke, making Lydia uneasy. Chimilik. A powerful, fiery blast erupts, sending a trainer scrambling away in fear from the intense heat and flames. A trainer, unperturbed, smiles unsettlingly while holding a fan as the fiery chaos unfolds around them. Whoa! The director is thrown violently backward by the blast, hitting the ground as other trainers cry out in alarm. Lydia stares in wide-eyed shock and confusion at the sudden, overwhelming disturbance. The red dragon is revealed, looking far more menacing than anticipated, with golden flourishes emphasizing its formidable presence. Lydia comforts the red-haired woman, noting the dragon will be incredibly difficult to train, and silently feels sorry for whoever is chosen. Trainer Thompson scoffs, disparaging the other trainers' fearful reactions as typical of girls. Trainer Thompson confidently boasts that he will demonstrate how to properly train the dragon, striking a theatrical pose as others observe. Trainer Thompson confidently walks toward the majestic red dragon, with Lydia looking on, her expression tense with concern. Trainer Thompson casually places his hand on the surprisingly docile red dragon, which appears curious about his touch. Trainer Thompson grins smugly, declaring the task simple and deriding those who couldn't handle it. Lydia's eyes widen in alarm, her expression reflecting a sudden realization of impending danger. Lydia shouts a warning to Trainer Thompson, calling him a moron, as the red dragon's massive claw looms over him menacingly. Trainer Thompson looks up in confusion, asking what is happening, as fiery energy swirls around him. Trainer Thompson cries out in pain as he is violently struck and thrown to the ground by the dragon's attack, surrounded by flames. Grrr! The enraged red dragon lets out a terrifying roar, its eyes glowing with destructive power. The colossal red dragon looms over the cowering Trainer Thompson, who desperately begs for mercy. Lydia raises a small, flute-like object to her lips, preparing to intervene. A close-up reveals the furious, focused eye of the red dragon. A trainer urges everyone to prepare their magical gear as other trainers rush forward, while Lydia hears her name called out. Trainer Thompson cries out in anguish, frantically demanding that someone do something to help him. Lydia commands the agitated red dragon to look in her direction. Lydia stands calmly before the red dragon, stating she won't approach unless it allows it, having recognized its formidable power. The red dragon roars, its sharp claws dangerously close to the cowering Trainer Thompson, as Lydia inwardly fumes, threatening to quit if Thompson isn't dismissed. The red dragon's intense, fiery yellow eye fixates on something unseen. Lydia advises someone to wait for the dragon's breathing to calm down. Lydia instructs to carefully back away little by little. Bang! The dragon's massive claw slams down. Kuwa! The red dragon lets out a thunderous roar. Lydia looks surprised, thinking she might have misjudged the situation, as the red dragon stands over the fallen Trainer Thompson. Other trainers react with wide-eyed fear and gestures of shock as they witness the chaotic scene. Duke Alberant observes the unfolding events with a serious and contemplative expression. Thump! The red dragon gently nudges Lydia with its head, amidst a beautiful, sunny backdrop, appearing calm and affectionate. Lydia stares with an utterly bewildered and shocked expression, asking, "Huh?" as the dragon shows unexpected tenderness. The red dragon joyfully holds a tiny, stylized Lydia figure in its mouth, surrounded by hearts and stars, while question marks fill the air, highlighting everyone's confusion over its bizarre affection for her. Lydia, the director, and Duke Alberant are all utterly confused by the unexpected turn of events. Duke Alberant scoffs, disappointed by the perceived rookie performance of the trainer. Duke Alberant silently criticizes Trainer Thompson for approaching the dragon without first assessing its behavior. The director flinches as Duke Alberant dismisses him, stating their conversation will continue later. The formidable red dragon gently nudges Lydia, who holds a parasol, while Duke Alberant observes them from above. Duke Alberant gazes upward with a thoughtful expression, bathed in sunlight. Duke Alberant asks Lydia for her name, and she politely responds, "Lydia, Your Grace." Lydia looks surprised as Duke Alberant commends her remarkable performance. Lydia modestly states she was just following procedure, but Duke Alberant points out she was the only one who actually did. Duke Alberant, with a knowing smile, prepares to ask Lydia a significant question. Duke Alberant asks Lydia if she would consider training Kagan, his dragon, causing Lydia to internally panic and reject the idea. Lydia vehemently declares her absolute refusal to become the Duke's personal trainer, not even for a second. Lydia apologizes to Duke Alberant, but reiterates her inability to accept the personal trainer role, prompting him to ask for her reasons. Lydia explains she only intervened due to Trainer Thompson's mistake and never intended to work with an Agrix-type dragon. Lydia clarifies that she wouldn't have stepped in if her fellow trainer hadn't made such a blunder. Lydia reflects on her deep bond with the orphanage, which is everything to her, making it impossible to leave despite the director's potential anger. Lydia reveals her desire to alleviate the director's burdens and ensure the younger children feel secure and unburdened. Lydia firmly states her commitment, emphasizing she cannot abandon the Ashar Training Center. Lydia sits opposite Duke Alberant, offering a sincere apology for her refusal. Duke Alberant looks contemplative, finding Lydia's rejection of his offer curious. Text explains the immense pride and honor associated with training an Agrix dragon and being connected to the Duke. A teacup sits, symbolizing the rejected opportunity, while the director wonders if Kagan will truly accept another trainer so easily. A person's hands slide a document across a table, indicating official proceedings. The director expresses concern, stating that while the dragon shows attachment to Lydia, her skill level is an entirely separate issue. The director informs Duke Alberant that trainer Lydia lacks experience handling dragons from the Ashar Empire nobility. The director clarifies that Lydia primarily trains dragons from less privileged families and insists that handing her over is not an option. The director passionately argues that Lydia is currently a vital asset to their training center. Other trainers mock the director, suggesting his refusal is merely to protect the noble's pride. The director, holding a document, tells the Duke that this situation provides an opportunity to expand the training center. Duke Alberant questions the value of a trainer's talent if the dragon rejects them, dismissing the director's argument. Duke Alberant challenges the director, asking if he would prefer to train Kagan himself, leaving the director sweating nervously. Duke Alberant notes the uncertainty of Lydia accepting the role of exclusive trainer, given her multiple prior rejections. Duke Alberant rises, concluding their discussion for the day with a final remark. Duke Alberant confidently asserts that everything will be fine, as there is someone capable of handling his dragon. The director looks utterly bewildered, asking, as he processes the Duke's cryptic statement. The director looks shocked, asking if the Duke truly entrusted an Agrix species dragon to the training center, while Lydia smiles innocently. Lydia looks horrified, exclaiming that the Duke must be insane and declaring it impossible. Lydia despairs over her murderous schedule of 24 dragons and the added burden of caring for an Agrix dragon. Lydia exasperatedly asks the crying director if he thinks any other trainer can handle an Agrix species dragon. The director states that Lydia only needs to feed and manage the dragon, not train it, surprising Lydia. Lydia angrily demands why she must take on the work caused by Trainer Thompson's accident, but the director states it was the Duke's decision. Lydia fumes, internally cursing Trainer Thompson as a useless jerk who caused trouble and wishing he had been crushed by the Agrix dragon. Lydia presents a resignation letter to the director, thanking him, but he frantically refuses her resignation. The director desperately clings to Lydia's leg, begging her to reconsider for the sake of the dragons she oversees. The director continues to plead, knowing he's exploiting Lydia's weakness, as she sighs in resignation. Lydia looks at a white dragon, contemplating that leaving isn't wrong, but wonders about the fate of the remaining dragons if she departs. Squeal. The white dragon joyfully reacts to Lydia, who looks pensive. Lydia agrees to stay, much to the director's delight, but states her terms with a hesitant but. Lydia firmly declares she will only feed, walk, and manage the dragon's scales, refusing any further training. The director thanks Lydia profusely, but she dismisses him, clarifying that she is not doing it for him and will stick to her minimal tasks. Lydia internally resolves that she will manage the situation as she sees fit, but will absolutely not be an exclusive trainer. A new sign on a dragon enclosure officially designates Lydia as the person in charge of its special care. From the shadows of a food-filled enclosure, glowing eyes appear as a voice asks, "Have you been well?" Thump. Lydia pushes a cart of food toward the cage, feeling daunted as a red dragon's spiky tail lashes out. Lydia tries to reassure the anxious dragon, explaining she is in charge until the Duke arrives, but the dragon lunges at her aggressively. Lydia stops it with a command and reaches out her hand as the dragon pauses to sniff the food. Roar! The dragon ignores her gesture and lets out a ferocious roar directly in her face. Lydia calmly holds up a finger, ordering the dragon to stop, and it surprisingly quiets down. The dragon lays down, looking completely bewildered, while Lydia observes its confused reaction. Whoa! Lydia struggles to maintain her composure, internally squealing that the dragon is so cute she must be crazy. After praising the dragon for obeying, Lydia lets it eat, and it immediately digs into the food with gusto. Lydia observes the dragon's behavior, realizing it must have been spoiled, and is experiencing this kind of proper care for the first time. The urge to train the dragon properly grows, but Lydia forces herself to resist getting too involved. Lydia asks the dragon if it's finished eating, receiving a low grumble in response. Grrr. Deciding a walk is in order, Lydia harnesses the dragon and hops on its back as it lets out an eager roar. The dragon suddenly thrashes about in a fit of extreme annoyance, trying to throw her off. Clenching her fists, Lydia tells herself to endure the tantrum, knowing that meddling further will only tie her down to this place. She steels her resolve, vowing to only feed, walk, and manage the dragon's scales, and absolutely nothing more. Screech! Shriek! As she grips the reins tighter, the dragon lets out a piercing cry. Lydia's resolve wavers as she desperately fights the impulse to properly train the creature. Holding the reins firmly, she gets face to face with the dragon and sternly repeats her command, "No." The Duke watches Lydia and the dragon from a distance, an unreadable expression on his face. As the Duke approaches, he compliments Lydia on her care of the dragon, which she acknowledges nervously. Growl. The dragon, Kaizen, affectionately nuzzles the Duke, who warmly greets his companion. The Duke apologizes for his tardiness while gently petting Kaizen. Lydia is surprised to see the Duke showing such a soft and caring expression. The Duke turns to Lydia, asking for her report on caring for Kaizen today. Lydia reports that since he only requested basic management, things went well enough. The Duke acknowledges that handling an agri-species dragon is a rare opportunity, but Lydia firmly restates that she won't be its exclusive trainer. He remarks on his surprise that Kaizen likes a female trainer, as it's quite unusual. The Duke explains the rarity of female trainers for large dragons, his unsettling gaze making Lydia clutch her stomach in discomfort. He dismisses his surprise, but Lydia interrupts, sharply reminding him she has no intention of becoming Kaizen's exclusive trainer. The Duke calls her name, making Lydia flinch as she timidly responds. He gives her a cold warning, reminding her that he can reverse his decision about her employment at any time. Lydia agrees to his terms, promising to care for Kaizen, but the Duke smirks, questioning her sincerity. He coldly challenges her, wondering aloud how long she can maintain her stubborn attitude, leaving Lydia confused. Lydia internally panics, wondering if she's triggered a bad story route, and reveals she has already sent letters to other training centers seeking a way out. The scene shifts to the Grand Castle as she desperately prays for a quick reply from anyone. The story flashes back, explaining her attempt to get straight to the point. She recalls sending letters to other training centers, only to find her target had already left, waving her goodbye. In a past memory, Lydia's teammates abandoned her with the feeding duties, turning it into an unwanted solo mission. Lydia finishes a task, dusting herself off with a satisfied sigh. A man identified as Count Olbarth praises Lydia's magical skill with the dragon she's just finished with. Lydia confirms with Count Olbarth that it's his last day, and he affirms he's returning to his homeland. He expresses regret, telling Lydia it's a waste to leave behind a trainer of her caliber. The Count recounts her impressive accomplishments, earning her trainer license at the youngest age with the highest score. A narration explains that the world of dragon trainers is dominated by nobles and the wealthy. For these elites, dragons are crucial in battles for succession, making trainers who can mold them invaluable. Tilde, despite the frustrating politics, she finds pure joy in simply working with dragons, as one affectionately licks her hand. Lydia grooms the white dragon, reflecting on the training center's unique variety of dragons. Lydia looks back, surprised, as someone off-panel comments on her lack of ambition. The director hands Lydia a small cloth, suggesting a little ambition is beneficial. Lydia stands thoughtfully, holding the wrapped item, and contemplates a saying about fish needing imperfect water. Lydia recounts her deep love for dragons, which motivated her to earn her license and join the training center, and then gasps. Lydia stares in awe at a large, shimmering red gem wrapped in cloth, questioning its purpose and what else she could desire. Lydia holds the radiant gem, pondering its immense value, while Duke Alberant appears behind her. Eek! Lydia recoils in surprise as Duke Alberant asks if she recognizes unseen individuals. Lydia turns to Duke Alberant, politely greeting him with a look of surprise. Lydia exclaims, "Director?" in shock, seeing the director with Duke Alberant. Lydia expresses confusion about the director's presence with the Duke as the director greets her casually. Duke Alberant dismisses himself to check on Kagan, instructing them to talk things over, leaving Lydia utterly bewildered. The director takes Lydia's hand, requesting a moment to speak with her. Lydia and the director sit across from each other, sharing tea in a formal setting. Lydia asks the director if anything is wrong, wondering if he or his family are unwell. The director abruptly asks Lydia for her opinion on Duke Alberant's Agrix dragon, catching her off guard. Lydia hesitantly responds, calling the dragon truly impressive. Lydia describes the red dragon's scales, noting how they seem to shimmer with a red glow even when still. Lydia details the dragon's fine, ridged scales and speculates its light shimmer relates to its scale shape or magic. Lydia enthusiastically describes the dragon as a living volcano, assuring the director he would be captivated, and proclaims it the most beautiful and intelligent dragon she has ever worked with. Lydia gestures animatedly as she praises the dragon, making the director laugh. The director addresses Lydia, who responds politely. The director announces his desire for Lydia to be the one to train Duke Alberant's dragon. Lydia looks stunned as the director explains that rumors have spread about her remarkable ability to calm the Duke's dragon. The director continues, detailing Duke Alberant's significant donation and visit to the orphanage with a priest. The director explains that the kind priest provided healing to the children at the orphanage without hesitation. Lydia sits thoughtfully, listening to the director's account of the Duke's generosity. Lydia asks if the director also received assistance, and he confirms that he did. The director reveals his past injury, showing a bloodied hand, and expresses profound gratitude for the healing he received, which allowed him to reach his current position. The director smiles warmly, expressing how truly glad he is. Lydia, with tears in her eyes, also states she is really glad. The director holds Lydia's hands, encouraging her not to worry about them and to accept Duke Alberant's grand opportunity. The director continues to hold Lydia's hands, emphasizing that her hands are proof of her immense effort. The director embraces Lydia, expressing regret that she holds herself back for their sake when she could achieve so much more. The director warmly embraces Lydia, affectionately calling her his proud daughter. Duke Alberant reclines comfortably in a grassy field next to his formidable red dragon, both appearing at peace. Duke Alberant asks Lydia if she enjoyed her conversation. Lydia thanks Duke Alberant for his consideration, which he subtly questions. Lydia states she has considered his previous offer, prompting a thoughtful hum from the Duke. Ugh. Lydia expresses frustration, looking exasperated. Duke Alberant, leaning on his dragon, implies Lydia is being deliberately difficult after his efforts at the orphanage. Lydia feigns regret that Duke Alberant forgot his offer, suggesting it be withdrawn since there are more experienced trainers, which makes him let out a small Duke Alberant remarks that he cannot even joke with Lydia. Duke Alberant accepts her changed mind, calling it a welcome turn of events. Duke Alberant suggests they discuss the details, and Lydia smiles, expressing that this is exactly what she hoped for. 3 young, tearful children plead with Lydia to visit them. Hick! Lydia comforts a crying, green-haired child, promising to visit, as the child asks for her promise again. The scene shifts, noting that time passed quickly after Lydia signed the contract with the Duke. On her departure day for the Duchy of Alberant, the director embraces Lydia, advising her to prioritize her own care and assuring her of his unwavering support. Lydia smiles warmly as she embraces someone, promising to send letters to them. A woman asks Lydia if she's truly departing, as someone off-panel calls out Melissa from below. Melissa smiles, suggesting that despite the farewell, everything worked out well, surrounded by other cheerful trainers. Lydia thanks her friends for seeing her off despite their busy schedules, and one offers surprising farewell news. Lydia looks shocked to learn that Duke Alberant filed an official complaint, resulting in Trainer Thompson's dismissal. Nice. Melissa celebrates Trainer Thompson's firing with an explosive pop, and Lydia joins in the delight. The group of trainers and children enthusiastically wave goodbye to Lydia, wishing her the best. Lydia waves back, reflecting on her time at the center, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness as she leaves. Eek. Duke Alberant, lounging beside Kagan, comments on Lydia's tardiness, surprising her. Lydia apologizes, explaining she was saying goodbye, and the Duke teases that she looks like she's leaving forever, despite her contract's generous benefits. Lydia expresses annoyance that the Duke came to pick her up, insisting she could manage, but acknowledges the irresistible contract terms. Lydia learns that her primary task is to help Kagan and the Duke's other dragons socialize, realizing the true nature of her new role. Lydia notes that Kagan and the Duke never had any tension, implying their bond was strong, despite Kagan's issues with others. Duke Alberant, lounging with Kagan, confirms their relationship was ideal, reinforcing that Kagan's problems were with other individuals. The Duke tells Lydia she will soon understand, asserting that he always made time for Kagan. The Duke's eye sparkles with a knowing look, hinting at the complexity of Kagan's socialization problem. Lydia reads a contract clause about an incentive for additional training, realizing the Duke expects her to identify Kagan's specific needs better than anyone. Lydia appears astonished as the Duke assures her she'll be fairly compensated if she discovers anything he missed, suggesting it's bound to happen. The Duke calmly asks if they can adjust additional compensation details if such a situation arises. Lydia agrees, appearing somewhat relieved, and the Duke affirms their agreement for a later detailed adjustment. Lydia admonishes herself not to overthink it, recognizing the contract is signed, and she must now focus on doing her best. Lydia smiles confidently as she gazes up at the sky, ready for her new chapter. Lydia marvels at the majestic white dragon she is riding, exclaiming, "Whoa!" Lydia surveys the beautiful, expansive landscape, realizing it is perfectly suited for raising dragons. Lydia eagerly proclaims the area perfect for raising dragons, especially with a stream, while someone tells her to calm down. Lydia explains her excitement, having spent her life in the city, but is warned that the place isn't as ideal as it appears. The attendant suggests Kagan's unusual obedience to Lydia might make any challenges less significant for her. Leah questions the attendant, who promises she will understand everything when she sees it for herself. Lydia looks anxious, sweat beading on her forehead, as three hooded figures on horseback loom in the background, signaling trouble. Lydia comments on Kagan's surprisingly cooperative behavior now, noting how frustrating it must be for the previous trainers to see a newcomer succeed effortlessly. Lydia recalls rumors of chaos in the eastern region a few years prior, suggesting unresolved issues might still linger. Lydia acknowledges her limited knowledge of past events, cautioning herself against expecting smooth sailing immediately. Lydia approaches an imposing open gate, emphasizing the vast power and influence of the Duchy of Alberant. Lydia expresses anticipation, believing the Duke's high rank means she will meet many dragons and trainers. Lydia eagerly wonders what kind of mysterious dragons she will encounter at the Duke's estate. Lydia looks surprised, seeing only Kagan, the red dragon. Lydia looks confused and disappointed, as the hooded attendant confirms there are no other dragons besides Kagan. Lydia is utterly shocked, exclaiming, "Seriously?" upon realizing the vast estate houses no other dragons. Kagan appears agitated, and the hooded attendant explains that no other dragons can be present while Kagan is so wild. Lydia angrily declares she will leave if there are no other dragons to train, but the attendant tells her to stop. Lydia attempts to depart, but Kagan dramatically blocks her path, causing her to recoil in surprise. Lydia looks bewildered and questions if the attendant is truly a certified trainer, implicitly criticizing their handling of Kagan. Lydia sighs in exasperation, acknowledging the difficulty of the situation with Kagan, but decides they should head inside. Lydia tries to lead Kagan, but the dragon remains stubbornly immobile. Lydia internally admits that Kagan is incredibly temperamental. Lydia observes Kagan, sensing that the dragon's behavior isn't intentionally malicious. Lydia reassures Kagan she isn't angry and promises to return shortly, instructing the dragon to wait inside patiently. Kind. Lydia gently pats Kagan's snout, telling the dragon it's their first training session and encouraging patience, convinced the dragon isn't at fault. Inside a grand hall, a man and a maid react with surprise, and the maid hints that such a scene is common. Lydia, engulfed in a fiery red aura, furiously yells Duke Alberant's name, declaring the dragon's responsibility lies entirely with its owner. A welcome greeting is extended as the scene shifts to a grand, richly decorated hall. The Duke inquires about any significant events during his absence, and a woman replies that numerous trainers have recently resigned. Pascal, the Duke of Alberant's personal secretary, adjusts his glasses, explaining that covering the gaps from the Duke's succession has been a constant struggle. The Duke, looking pensive, reveals the biggest problem is finding a new trainer, recalling the necessity of removing Ulysse Alberant and his wife. A flashback shows Ulysse Alberant looming over a young Duke, explaining how Ulysse tried to steal from the ducal house after the Duke's parents died young. The narrative explains that wealthy houses treated dedicated dragon trainers, especially for rare species like Kagan, almost like vassals. A fiery scene depicts fallen trainers in a grand hall, with the narration stating that only exclusive trainers held handling secrets, but those key individuals are now gone. The Duke reflects on his uncle's brutality, noting that he killed all the trainers when things turned against him, even considering the possibility of their betrayal. The Duke asks Pascal if he has found a new trainer for the dragons, returning to the present conversation. Pascal replies that he has found someone quite interesting, prompting the Duke to ask for more details. Pascal reveals with a knowing look that the new person is a trainer Kagan actually cozies up to, leaving the Duke surprised. Pascal explains that Kagan showed affection and practically melted in front of the trainer, prompting a shocked reaction from the Duke. Pascal emphasizes Kagan's unique and reclusive nature, stating that the dragon only appears for those who meet his mysterious criteria, a feat even Pascal rarely achieved. Pascal walks away, admitting he still can't picture Kagan's newfound compliance, as a surprised attendant watches him leave. Pascal confidently assures the Duke that he will see for himself soon enough, leaving the Duke looking bewildered. Pascal exclaims the Duke's name, as the Duke gazes back in confusion, possibly due to Lydia's sudden appearance. Lydia, engulfed in a fiery red aura, angrily confronts Duke Alberant, having found him in the hall. Lydia furiously stomps her foot, demanding to know why the Duke isn't tending to Kagan, and Pascal is surprised to realize she is a woman. Lydia emphatically states that her reason for coming is precisely to address the issue of Kagan, surprising the Duke. Lydia asks if Kagan has always lived in solitude, and the Duke confirms Kagan has been that way since childhood, on his own terms. Lydia expresses dismay at Kagan's situation, leaning on the Duke's desk, prompting him to ask what's troubling her. Lydia clarifies the training expectations, confirming that Kagan's top priorities are preventing aggression towards other dragons and getting him to accept food from others. The Duke nods in agreement, confirming Lydia's understanding of the training objectives. Lydia declares that the very first thing they should do for Kagan's training is to relocate him elsewhere. Lydia explains that Kagan was separated due to his discomfort and the uneasiness he caused other dragons, which is precisely why he needs to be relocated. Lydia, observing Kagan looking at other dragons in the sky, asserts that isolating him isn't a solution, and he's become temperamental from a lack of socialization. The Duke appears serious as he listens to Lydia's assessment, acknowledging that Kagan simply doesn't know how to interact with others. The Duke asks Lydia if she is confident in her proposed training plan, to which she unequivocally affirms her confidence. The Duke closes a book, his gloved hand resting on it, signaling a decision. The Duke states that any consequences from this training will fall entirely on trainer Lydia, who looks back at him with determined eyes. Lydia confirms her responsibility, but explains that preparation is necessary before they begin, prompting the Duke to inquire about the details. Lydia, standing next to Kagan, explains that the initial phase will be basic obedience training, utilizing a specific window of time while Kagan's enclosure is being relocated. The Duke suggests that 1 week should be sufficient for the training, then decisively declares it locked in to Lydia's surprise. The Duke reminds Lydia that she herself promised to train Kagan in obedience during the enclosure relocation. The Duke walks away, inviting Lydia to look forward to the challenge ahead. The Duke turns back to Lydia, stating he trusts she is not foolish enough to fail her first task as an exclusive trainer. Lydia internally remarks on how the Duke latches onto a single phrase, observing that he probably has never been spoken to so directly before. Lydia internally notes that other trainers were likely too busy flattering the Duke, to be honest, then outwardly promises to deliver results that please his grace. Lydia sits outdoors, eating an apple, and wonders if she is being avoided by others. Lydia observes that people flinch and obviously avoid her whenever they spot her from a distance. Lydia, sitting beside Kagan, reflects that despite her busy schedule, she still feels the sting of being avoided. Lydia is shown with a bucket, and a message appears announcing that today is the day to check the results of the basic obedience training promised to the Duke. Lydia stands confidently next to Kagan, smiling, ready for the evaluation of their basic obedience training. Lydia mounts Kagan, telling him, "Let's go," and the dragon responds with a deep growl. Kagan flies high in the sky, and Lydia resolves to show her employer what he wants, as she made a promise. The Duke stands in the courtyard as Lydia and Kagan approach, with an attendant looking shocked at the sight. The Duke watches Lydia and Kagan with a stern and observant expression. The Duke calmly acknowledges their arrival as Kagan stands imposingly near the castle. Kagan lets out a fierce growl, looking down with an intimidating presence. Attendants on horseback struggle to control their agitated dragons, trying to calm them as Kagan's presence causes a stir. Lydia calmly commands Kagan to stand down as the imposing dragon eyes her. Kagan lets out a growl, his massive head positioned close to Lydia. Lydia, unperturbed, instructs Kagan to move further back. Kagan grumbles, slowly retreating as Lydia directs his position. Two men observe, one expressing surprise as Kagan visibly obeys Lydia's command to lie down. Kagan lies obediently, prompting an unseen observer to question if the dragon is truly obeying her commands. The Duke, looking away, silently wonders if someone other than him is actually controlling Kagan. An attendant confirms that Kagan is perfectly following basic commands, just as trainer Lydia had promised. Lydia looks puzzled, internally reaffirming her confidence in Kagan's training, yet confused by the Duke's unpleased expression. The Duke appears stern, pondering why Lydia wouldn't be pleased by Kagan's clear obedience. Lydia states that Kagan is obedient for now, causing the Duke to question her meaning. Kagan yips, and Lydia explains that no living creature, especially a dragon, is perfect or entirely predictable. Lydia stresses that a dragon is not a mere tool and can unpredictably lash out at any moment. The Duke addresses Lydia, who promptly responds, acknowledging his summons. The Duke informs Lydia that he is entrusting her with the education of the ducal house's apprentice trainers. Lydia looks utterly dumbfounded, asking for clarification on the unexpected responsibility. Lydia questions why she would be chosen to educate apprentice trainers when others are seemingly available. The Duke calmly reveals that the official trainers of the Albriant family have all resigned for undisclosed reasons, leaving a critical void. Lydia's eyes widen in disbelief as she comprehends that dragons have been managed by uncertified apprentices all this time. Lydia furiously confronts the Duke, demanding to know why he withheld such vital information until now, especially after today's risky session. Lydia vehemently argues about the potential disaster if Kagan had disobeyed, emphasizing the risk of lives lost. The Duke casually asks, "Is that so?" causing Lydia to visibly tremble with contained rage at his nonchalance. The Duke, with a subtle smirk, remarks on the good fortune that the training succeeded, noting the severe cost had it failed, further infuriating Lydia. Lydia slams her fist, exasperated that the prestigious House of Alberant has no official trainers. Lydia expresses her dismay, highlighting the House of Alberant's esteemed reputation as the family chosen by an agri-species dragon. Lydia passionately argues that a lack of official trainers for such a rare creature is like an ancient noble house losing its foundational heritage. The Duke calmly acknowledges that Lydia's harsh assessment isn't entirely inaccurate, as a small, purple-haired figure watches below. The Duke stands by a sunlit window as another person addresses him as Your Grace. The Duke clarifies he came to commend Lydia's successful training of Kagan, but now sees it's unnecessary. As Lydia approaches, the Duke asks Lydia if she recalls the terms of her contract regarding additional training incentives, as she looks on curiously. Lydia considers the contract, realizing the clause about additional training for an incentive. Lydia hesitates, speechless, as the Duke asks if she believes having only apprentices is suitable for Kagan's training. The Duke pointedly asks if educating those apprentices is a necessary prerequisite for Kagan's training, making Lydia realize his manipulative intent. The Duke dismisses Lydia's objections, reminding her of the compensation and her clear success in gaining Kagan's complete obedience. The Duke inwardly confirms his suspicion, having anticipated Lydia's reaction. Lydia confronts the Duke, asking if he's actually disappointed that Kagan obeys his trainer. Lydia internally confirms the Duke's disappointment, noting his subtle flinch. The Duke formally acknowledges that educating the apprentice trainers is now part of Lydia's duties, as per her contract. Lydia then asks the Duke if any records of the House of Albarant's secret official training techniques still exist. The Duke turns to Lydia, inquiring about her knowledge of the House of Albarant. Lydia apologizes, explaining her limited familiarity with aristocratic affairs, as her training focused on clients across the kingdom. The Duke begins to explain, revealing that the ducal house went a century without an agri-species dragon until Kagan chose him. The Duke darkly narrates that those who ruled the family during that period were not true heirs, with unsettling bloodstains implying a violent history. The Duke explains that in the absence of a legitimate successor, all family members naturally vied for the ducal title. The Duke reveals his uncle was exceptionally greedy, believing that if he couldn't have the title, no one should. The Duke poses a chilling question to Lydia, what she supposes a man like his uncle would do to the official trainers. The Duke concludes that his study of the agri-species dragon through Lydia's training of Kagan will be a lengthy process. The Duke and Lydia stand together, looking towards the castle, ready for their new dynamic. The Duke states he will share information with the apprentice trainers, recognizing their experience in the house as invaluable. The Duke decides to postpone relocating Kagan's enclosure, opting instead to focus on increasing Kagan's socialization with other dragons and coordinating with the apprentices. The Duke agrees to Lydia's preferred training approach, confirming her methods are acceptable. The Duke expresses surprise that Lydia has not yet demanded to terminate her contract, given the unmentioned responsibilities. Lydia considers that if she terminated her contract, the Duke would silence her to protect the family's image. The Duke looks at Lydia, questioning if his assumption about her compliance and understanding of the situation is incorrect. A small, purple-haired chibi figure, seemingly watching from afar, is seen floating in the sky. Lydia smiles, sensing the strong, unwelcoming atmosphere surrounding her from the ducal staff. Lydia stands with the long-haired attendant, observing a group of probationary trainers, feeling their dislike. The long-haired attendant reminds the probationary trainers of the Duke's statement from yesterday. Lydia, with a forced social smile, introduces herself to the group as their new exclusive trainer, asking for their cooperation. The probationary trainers react with visible shock and discomfort at Lydia's introduction, clearly displeased. The long-haired attendant reminds the apprentices that Lydia was personally chosen by the Duke. Lydia smiles slyly as the short-haired apprentice and another trainer react with confusion and disbelief to the attendant's revelation. The long-haired attendant calmly observes the stunned probationary trainers. The attendant prompts Lydia to speak freely, but she internally questions how she can in such a hostile atmosphere. Lydia observes that those seeing her for the first time are surprised, while those familiar with her are wary. Lydia, putting a hand on her chest, acknowledges the Duke's instructions but asserts her lack of knowledge about the local dragons. Lydia informs the apprentices that they are the ones who know the most about the Albarant Duchy's dragons. Lydia offers to share her expertise from the Asher Training Center in exchange for their knowledge about the ducal dragons. A probationary trainer, an older man with a mustache, steps forward and asks Lydia to speak. The older probationary trainer questions Lydia's competence for an exclusive position, highlighting the danger of a probationary trainer provoking an agri-species dragon. A female probationary trainer confesses they almost got injured by a dragon's claw, questioning their ability to handle them. Lydia addresses the group, emphasizing that everyone knows the danger of dragons and should share information to prevent harm. A female probationary trainer with braided hair nervously admits that they are still unlicensed probationary trainers. Lydia turns away, stating that regardless of licenses, everyone present shares an affection for dragons. Lydia offers her hand, clarifying that she doesn't intend to order them around, but wants to work as colleagues to care for the dragons. Lydia bows deeply to the probationary trainers, showing her sincerity and commitment. A flashback to one day ago shows the Duke and Lydia, as the Duke suggests silencing her was a possible path. The Duke's expression shifts to a chilling smile, revealing his ruthless nature. The Duke laughs menacingly as Lydia looks on, disturbed by his cold demeanor. The Duke states that Lydia would have suffered the same fate as the previous trainers if her initial task had failed. Lydia internally registers the Duke's direct threat, realizing his extreme measures. The Duke walks away, assuring Lydia of fair compensation to prevent complaints, revealing his cynical approach. The Duke, looking back with a confident smirk, challenges them to prove their worth, implying their survival hinges on it. Lydia, surrounded by dark energy, curses, realizing the Duke's manipulative tactics and his veiled threats. Lydia reflects on employers using lives and money as threats, but as an exclusive trainer, she knows the best way to manage dragons is direct interaction. Lydia observes an apprentice carrying food as they approach the dragon enclosures. Lydia questions if she's expected to feed the growling and roaring dragons alone, highlighting the daunting and dangerous task. The apprentice smiles smugly, deeming feeding dragons a basic task, while Lydia fumes, sensing his underestimation. Lydia internally calculates that refusing the feeding task would give the Duke an excuse to criticize her. A massive pile of various fruits and meats is shown, representing the immense amount of food needed for the dragons. The Duke looks on with a subtle smirk as Lydia clenches her jaw in frustration. Lydia, forcing a bright smile, declares she'd rather die than fail and confirms that simply feeding them will be enough. The male apprentice hesitantly agrees as Lydia confidently states she will take full responsibility for feeding the dragons to understand them. Lydia smiles broadly, enthusiastically telling the male apprentice that his assistance would actually be a hindrance, urging him to leave. The male apprentice runs off, looking surprised and muttering to himself as Lydia stands before the giant food pile. The male apprentice runs, internally scoffing that Lydia thinks she's the only one who has faced such challenges. Lydia recalls her past experiences at the Ashar Training Center, where she endured similar overwhelming tasks from villains. Lydia looks at a caged dragon, its tongue lolling out, and vows to make them regret putting her in charge of feeding. Lydia cheerfully tells the dragon she'll prepare its food immediately, noting its hunger as the dragon growls in response. Lydia observes a dragon's scales, questioning their poor and rough condition. Lydia observes Kagan devouring its food, realizing the dragon is severely undernourished. Chomp, chomp. Lydia gently touches Kagan's head, noting how frantically it eats as the dragon growls in response. Lydia internally seethes, realizing the Duke's staff attempted to break her spirit by neglecting the dragons. Lydia laughs menacingly, her eyes glowing red with a fierce determination against her opponents. Lydia vows to instill the fundamental principles of a trainer into the other staff through her actions. The long-haired attendant nervously questions if leaving Lydia alone to feed all the dragons is truly acceptable. A male trainer recalls their senior's warnings about feeding dragons, expressing concern about Lydia handling 30 portions alone. The male trainer furiously questions how many years they have been caring for dragons to be so easily dismissed. The ducal trainers question the logic of a single capital trainer being appointed to teach and lead them. The male trainer smirks dismissively, calling Lydia's talk of loving dragons a complete joke. Lydia smirks while petting Kagan, aware that the other trainers expect her to fail and give up soon.